Hey, what is going on, guys? Max Settings here, and welcome back to another review. In today's review, we are going to be taking a look at the Campfire Audio Solaris 2020. And this is the third of the Campfire Audio Special. So that means that this IEM was provided for review by Headphones.com. Headphones.com is the online audio retailer that carries many different brands, and they have the 365-day return policy. So if you buy something from them, you have a full 365 days to decide if it is for you. If not, you can return it for a full refund. So once again, thanks to them for providing these for review. Now, the Campfire Solaris, I believe, is their flagship IEM. It is a hybrid design, and this is the 2020 revision. There's been quite a few revisions. There was like the original, there was the SE, and I think there's like one or two other ones. They just announced another new version of the Solaris. I did not review the older versions of the Solaris, nor did I review the SE. I've heard them at shows, but I don't have a good enough of an impression to tell you how these compare to the older ones, so unfortunately I will not be able to tell you that. But I will go ahead and look at this in a general sense just to see what I think about it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get specs out of the way, and then we will move on into the rest of the review. So the Solaris 2020 is coming in at $1,500. It has a 15.5 ohm impedance with a sensitivity of 94 dB volt, a frequency response of 5 to 20,000 hertz, and then it is using a 3BA 1 dynamic driver design. And then the build of it, moving into that aspect, it has a PVD finish. I'm not sure exactly what that stands for, but the Solaris 2020 actually feels really nice. This feels very, very nice and very, very premium, where the other Campfire audio stuff to me has always felt kind of like, something you made in like a workshop where, rough angles and just like a kind of a very simple metal shell that would be not that hard to CNC out. Where this, on the other hand, feels really premium. This feels on par for its $1,500 price point. It is a black, it's not necessarily like completely shiny, but it does definitely show fingerprints. But this black finish, and what it feels like to me more than anything is ceramic. It feels a lot like ceramic to me. I know it's metal, but the overall feel of it feels a lot like ceramic. It has MMCX connector, which of course I don't like. Once again, prefer a 2-pin. I didn't put tips on this one, so you can see the nice silver nozzle. And yeah, it has a nice weight to it. The finish is very smooth. The shape is a lot better. It has like some nice little ridges there for accents. There's no exposed screws or anything really, except for the one here at the top. And yeah, it feels really nice. Now, as for comfort, it is a larger IEM. I personally find this a lot more comfortable than the other Campfire audio stuff with the angle shapes. This is a much more, I'd say, sane or typical ear shape IEM. And all in all, I do find it a lot more comfortable. It is big and it has some weight to it. It's kind of a weird angle, so you put the tip on there, and then you have a lot hanging off of it that kind of pulls down a little bit. But all in all, I didn't have any issues with comfort with it, but I could see it being too large for some people's ears. So comfort on the Solaris 2020 is not too bad, but the build, really, really nice build. So as for power requirements, the Solaris 2020 is not nearly as picky as the Andromeda and the Aura was. This actually worked for me on my Asgard 3 without hissing, but it did hiss on the Modius and the Rebel amp. So it's still sensitive, but it's not quite as bad as the other two. I think you get away with a little bit higher noise floor with the Solaris versus the Aura and the Andromeda. Now, as for included accessories, again, cork case. This one is brown cork with a gold zipper and Campfire Audio logo for the, the zipper handle. Same old Campfire Audio little bag to separate the IEMs so they don't clack into each other. Bunch of tips included in the box, and yeah, these cork carrying cases are pretty cool. Now, this is the super Smoky Litz cable. which essentially is just the Smoky Litz cable with thicker wire. Frankly, I dislike this even more than I liked the Smoky Litz cable. It's even stiffer because the wires are larger. And yeah, I would also replace this. This is a little heavier and it's even stiffer and a little bit more janky, at least in my opinion, compared to the regular Smoky Litz cable. But yeah, this does technically have a upgraded cable versus the regular Solaris. So starting off with frequency response, the Solaris is quite warm. It has, I'd say, about a 6 dB bass shelf that starts down there right around 20 hertz. And it just kind of starts downward sloping across the entire frequency range and flattens out by the time you hit about 1K. After that, the mid tuning is weird. There is a peak at 2K that kind of drops off for a very recessed rest of your upper mid range. And then there is a bit of a treble peak, or not treble peak, there's a bit of a treble, I don't want to call it shelf, but the treble comes back up in your 9 to 10K area, or like, yeah, right around that 7, 8, 9, 10K area. The treble comes back up and it's a bit forward, similar to actually how the older Andromedas were. It kind of has that upper treble sparkle there and a decent amount of air overall. So tuning on this is weird. It's not as weird as the Aura, but it's kind of also a little weird. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk detail. The Solaris 2020 is definitely decently detailed. I don't think it's particularly much above where the Andromeda was in terms of detail. I'd say it's about on par with that at best. It's a decently resolving IEM with a good bit of air, but it's not really standout to me for $1,500. As for the bass, the Solaris 2020's bass is surprisingly poor for a dynamic driver. A lot of people say the Solaris is like, oh, it's such the bass head, one of the bass head, IEMs to get. I'm listening to it. I'm like, this bass is not very good. It's very boosted, but it's not very textured. It does not have, it's not very good microdynamics overall. It doesn't really slam that much, and it's not particularly punchy. It's just very mediocre bass with very mediocre bass resolution all in all. It's better than the Andromeda and the Aura. It still is a dynamic driver, and it's better bass than that, but it's not particularly great dynamic driver bass. Now, as for other aspects of it, the timbre is not the worst. It's BA timbre. It's not on the upper end of BA timbre, but I'd say it's maybe on par with like the Andromeda's BA timbre, so it's okay. The soundstage or head stage of it is decently wide. I would say it's definitely above average. Imaging, I would say, is also slightly above average. It definitely has very decent technical abilities in all of those regards. Overall micro dynamics are, I'd say, not too bad in the treble in the mid-range, but it's not very good in the bass region, and it's not super macro dynamic either. It's it's nowhere near like what the Dunu Luna was with that single DD that was really good and really punchy, but it's not awful compared to some other BA setups, but nothing special in that regard. And that's about all we need to cover in terms of sound on the Solaris 2020. So as for some comparisons and my final thoughts here, the Solaris 2020 is very flawed. The bass is not great, and the tuning is really weird. That big 2K peak with very recessed mids, and the treble's somewhat peaky. But for whatever reason, there are a few tracks that I listed this that just somehow hit. It's not I wouldn't say this is a particularly great IEM all in all. For its price point, absolutely not. There were a few tracks that, like I said, I listened to with that I actually enjoyed, but all in all, it's pretty wonky sounding. This is very oftenly compared to the Sony IER Z1R, and this is miles behind that. The Sony IER Z1R is so much better than this. U12T is, I've seen it on sale for $1,600, brand new from a few different dealers. For that price, $100 more than this, absolutely. Even though you lose a hybrid, I honestly think the U12T still has better bass than this does. The Solaris 2020 to me is just meh. for whatever reason, I don't hate it. I don't know why I don't hate it, because I should hate it. The bass isn't particularly good. It has good detail, but nothing else about it is particularly great. Weird tuning, timbre's not particularly great. I guess it has decent head stage and imaging. It pretty much has everything lined up for me to not like it. And I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. It's very, very mediocre. A few songs, like I said, it does well, but all in all, just I cannot sadly cannot recommend the Solaris 2020. If you want to get a hybrid IEM for around the same price, Sony R, IER, Z1R all day long over this. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed my review of the Solaris 2020. Once again, thanks to headphones.com for providing this for review. Real shame, I wish it was better because I love the build and look of it. But anyway, I will link of where to buy this in the description below if you want to check one out, as well as my Twitter, my contact email, and all other relevant information. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review and the end of the Campfire audio special. But I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!